Hello, welcome back. Today we're looking at some cards that I think that are going to be really good in Commander, and the cards from the new set Duskmourn that I think are going to be pretty cool to use in the Commander format. Yeah, pretty quick intro. Some of these cards are, pretty, they're mythics and that kind of stuff, and they're kind of popular as well, but it still doesn't mean they're not going to be good, so we'll just dive into it. Alright, so the first card here, and these are in no particular order, just kind of I'll toss them up here. We have a Split Up. It is a 3 mana sorcery, destroy all tapped creatures or destroy all untapped creatures. I think this card's going to be very, very good. It's a 3 mana board wipe. Sure, it is a little conditional, but it's kind of really, really good, especially if you're in that kind of meta where everyone has a huge board state and no one wants to swing out because of fear of retaliation or the crackback. You swing in with your stuff, destroy all untapped creatures, you know what I mean? So you can wipe their board, you should get in a ton of damage, leave your board probably mostly intact. But yeah, I think this card, especially for 3 mana too, I think this card's very, very good. Plus, if you have like vehicle decks or ways to tap down creatures, you can always tap your stuff down in other ways as well, because you can crew at instant speed at any time. You can crew as many as you want to. You can overcrew with vehicles, or mana dorks. You can save your mana dorks and destroy all the big beefies on the field, that kind of stuff. Like, this card is very, very versatile, and I think it's going to be a very, very highly played card. Okay, up next we have Leyline of Transformation. It's 4 mana enchantment. With the ley lines, if it's in your opening hand, you can put it on the battlefield for free. As it enters, you choose a creature type. Creatures you control are the chosen type in addition to their other types. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. I don't know how to break this. I'm sure there's probably a very easy way to break this. But just being able to turn all your stuff basically turn your deck into a tribal deck for free. So if you have cards that matter about tribal stuff, like, even if you're already running, in my case, I run a lot of angels. Obviously, angels are usually mono white, but there's obviously not all angels in the deck. There's some, utility creatures and that kind of stuff. This basically turns all your utility creatures into the type of creature that you're already trying to play. So your utility creatures can benefit from it. Again, also, I'm sure there's a way to break this with something, because, everyone finds a way to break it. I think overall, again, and if you're casting this for free, the opening hand, the leylines are good because of that reason, but they also have to be balanced for 4 mana at the same time. So, I don't know, I think this is probably one of the better ones from the set, the new ones at least. But yeah, that's Leyline of Transformation. Okay, up next we have a very interesting card, especially because it's in mono black. Nowhere to Run. It's 2 mana enchantment with flash. Whenever it enters, target creature an opponent controls gets -3/-3 until end of turn. Pretty straightforward. But the fun stuff: creatures your opponents control can be the targets of spells and abilities as though they didn't have hexproof. Ward abilities of those creatures don't trigger, which is kind of crazy. It's like Shadow Spear, but even Shadow Spear doesn't even get around Ward. But yeah, it's kind of nuts, especially on a black enchantment, which is pretty crazy. I figured that'd be like a blue or a green thing. And maybe white too, but definitely not black. But yeah, so when it's ETBs, anything with ward or hexproof can be targeted with the -3/-3 because it hits the battlefield at the same time. Because the first one's a triggered ability, and the second one is just a static ability. But attack the creatures you don't control anyway. But yeah, this also enables other stuff too. Like, say you have a removal spell, but you can't get past the hexproof. Pop this down, hit something else. Play your 2 mana removal spell too. This card is going to be very, very popular, I think. And even -3/-3 hits a lot of stuff for 2 mana too. Like, all the mana dorks go down. A lot of the really important stuff too. Granted, to be fair, there has been stuff that has been 4 toughness a lot recently, because that's what Wizards likes to do, but I think this card's going to see a lot of play, just because the ability, the ward doesn't trigger, because everything has ward these days. Literally everything, basically. So I think not having to pay the extra mana for ward is going to be huge. Okay, now we have Insidious Fungus. This card is pretty similar to Cankerbloom, which we got in Phyrexia Owlby one, but it has the added bonus of being able to draw you a card and putting a land from your hand on the battlefield tapped, which is interesting. So I think, if I remember correctly, Cankerbloom is 2 mana and it costs 1 to activate. This is 1 mana and it costs 2 to activate. I should probably read the card too. Insidious Fungus, 1 mana, 1 green. It's a 1/2. It has pay 2, sacrifice this card, choose 1. Destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, draw a card, then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. Pretty good. Like I said, 3 mana, destroy an artifact or enchantment is not the best, but it costs 1 mana at first. So, you're paying it over 2 turns or maybe 3 turns. You have a blocker. It's a 1/2, so can chump block 1/1s if need be and kill them if you really wanted to. But yeah, I think this card is going to be very... Obviously, it's probably going to be used more of a removal, I think, than anything. But just the ability to, in the late game, 3 mana, draw a card first off, which is pretty good in green. Plus, if you have a land, you can put it down too. But even just like I said, it's 1 mana this turn. Next turn is 2 mana, draw a card. And if you have a land on top of that, I think that's just a really good rate. Granted, it's not the best, of course, but for an uncommon, that's pretty dang good. So I think this card's going to see a lot of play. Alright, next up we have a Mythic this time. The Mythics in this set are pretty awesome. I think this is probably one of my favorite ones. It's Funeral Room and Awakening Hall. It is a new enchantment room, the new mechanic, or battle, good lord, not battle. The new, I guess, card type, even though it's still an enchantment, but, whatever. New mechanic, I guess you would call it. So Funeral Room for 3 mana. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain a life. So basically a harder to remove Zulaport Cutthroat. Sure, it's 1 more mana, but it's an enchantment, so it's harder to remove. And then for 8 mana, if you have that mana ready to go, or you can, like I said, you can cast, to how rooms work, you can cast either half for the mana cost. That door unlocks on the battlefield. So if you cast it for 3 mana, you have just the Funeral Room side. If you cast it for 8 mana, you have the Awakening side. But as a sorcerer, you can pay the mana cost of the locked room to unlock it. So you put this down for 3 mana, 5 turns go by, you have enough mana for Awakening Hall, you can activate the ability, and that effect is now available. But Awakening Hall says, 8 mana, when you unlock this door, return all creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Back half of Finale of Eternity, you bring all your stuff back. It's a one-sided, Rise of the Dark Realms, where you can only target your stuff versus everybody else's, but you don't lose life either, though, so it's kind of like, it's a good card, I think. But I think the fact that that it's modal is really, really good. I mean, for 3 mana, who doesn't want that effect in any Aristocrats deck? It's an enchantment, it's harder to remove than a creature. I don't know, I think this card is very good and very versatile. And I'll be playing it for sure. Plus, you're getting your sacrifice deck. You're going to want your creatures back in the battlefield at some point, too. So when you have the mana eventually, you can Dark Ritual this, you can get it out super early. If you have Keurig, you can only pay 5 for it, that kind of stuff, or 6 for it, like that, I don't know. And this is a very good card on both ends. That's why it's a Mythic, I guess. Alright, we have another room, actually, back to back here. We have Dazzling Theater, 4 mana. Creature spells you cast have Convoke. Pretty straightforward. And then on the other side of the room, we have the Prop Room for 3 mana. Untap each creature you control during each other player's untap step. So for Dazzling Theater, it's pretty straightforward. If you're in mono white, which this card is white, you can definitely take advantage of, convoking if you have a lot of soldiers or white tokens and that kind of stuff to cast your actual big threats and stuff like that. That's pretty straightforward. There's a few cards that do that. They give stuff convoke, like Wand of the World Soul, I believe. But the Prop Room side is actually interesting. It's like it's like the card Drum Bellower, but it's an enchantment. It costs the same amount of mana too, which is crazy. So it's another copy of Drum Bellower. You can, with Dazzling Theater, you can use your creatures to tap to cast other creature spells, and then beginning of the untap step of the next turn, untap them all again. So you played creatures, you've cheated mana costs, and then boom, you have a board again. You have blockers again. So it's just a very, very versatile card, and I think it's going to see, especially the mono white, token stuff, probably see a lot of play. Okay, now here's a pretty popular card. I know everyone's talked about this a lot, and probably to death, but Come Back Wrong for 3 mana. It's a sorcery. Destroy target creature. If a creature card is put into the graveyard this way, return it to the battlefield under your control. Sacrifice it at the beginning of your next end step. It's a very interesting removal spell that also reanimates for a turn the card you destroyed. It is a sorcery, so I mean it is definitely limited. It's not like going to be a gotcha moment kind of a thing, but interesting about this card, because destroying the creature is not a separated type line, you can destroy a commander, and you will have the commander until end of turn, because of the way that the card is worded. So, it's because it's a replacement effect when the commander goes to the graveyard, but since the way the card is worded, you will actually get the commander instead of it going back to the command zone or wherever they want to put it until the end of the turn, because at the very end of the turn, sacrifice it, then they get to pick, but yeah, for a whole turn you can have someone's commander, which is interesting. I don't know, I'm sure there's a way to benefit yourself with that, but anyway, other than that, I mean, any creature with an ETB or an interesting ability, is going to be very helpful. Because, if it comes back, you turn to the battlefield, you get all the ETB stuff. Or, say, something that has haste, and you can give all your stuff haste for a turn when you wouldn't be able to in mono black, or stuff like that. It's a very interesting card, and there's an insane amount of opportunities to use this card in an interesting way, because there's just so many cards, and there's just so many effects around in the game right now. But yeah, I think this is a very interesting card. It's a removal spell and also a let me borrow that for a turn kind of a spell. It's very interesting. The design is very cool. But yeah, this is, like I said, this card's been talked about a lot because it was spoiled on pretty early during the previous season, before Bloomburrow even came out, I think. So this card's been around for a hot minute, but I think it's an awesome card. Alright, next up we have a red card. It is Walts of Rage. It's a 5-mana sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature. Until end of turn, whenever a creature you control dies, exile the top card of your library. You may play it until the end of your next turn. So this is depending on how you look at it, a worse Chandra's Ignition because it doesn't hit players. But it does wipe the board, potentially, if you have high enough powered creature. I think the interesting part about this card is, yeah, obviously it can be a board wipe if you have a really big card. Like you have a 10-10 out, does 10 damage to everything, wipes the board. But I like how this card kind of not rewards you, but at least kind of gives you hey, your stuff died, but here's a bunch of cards you can play off exile until the end of your next turn, which is crazy. Also, you don't have to have anything out to play this. You can play, you could. You have to have a creature at least, to be fair. But the until end of turn, whenever a creature you control dies, is an interesting clause on this as well. So if you're in Rakdos and stuff, right? You want an aristocrat kind of a style thing here. You can play this card, save your stuff or whatever, right? Don't play your stuff out. Because it says until end of turn when a creature you control dies, you can play this first, play a bunch of stuff, sacrifice, see a huge sacrifice loop, and still get the benefit of having to exile the top card of your library. So was it Prosper? Plus Prosper will hugely benefit from this because a bunch of cards in exile. You can make treasures when you cast them. I know I hate Prosper. He's super good and it's really annoying. He's a very good card. But I think this is a really good card for Prosper potentially. I just think overall it's an interesting card because it is Chandra's Ignition, but with an upside kind of a downside kind of a thing. I don't know. I think it's very interesting. And that's why it's on the list. Okay, we have a counterspell on here, and I'm going to keep it real with you. I'm not a huge fan of counterspells because it's just a boring way to play. I don't know. That's my opinion. I'm wrong, of course, because it's a very important part of the game, and I totally get that. But blue just has so many. But this one I actually kind of like. It's Don't Make a Sound for 2 mana. Instant. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 2 generic. If they do, surveil 2. So at its best, you counter a spell for 2 mana, right? And it's 1 blue, 1 generic. So if they don't have mana, it's a better counter spell, technically speaking. Obviously, if they have the mana, then it's not a good counter spell at all. But I like the fact that even if your card doesn't get countered, you still get to do something. You surveil 2. Again, it's a common. It's not going to be the best counter spell in the world, but at least for me and my kind of playstyle, I play a lot of white and black and red. Like I play a lot of Mardu or Orzhov basically. And obviously, there's a few counter spells in that, but it's, they're pretty like off-brand. Tybalt's Trickery, Mana Tithe, Lapse of Certainty, like Withering Boon, like that kind of stuff. But this is interesting because if you counter something and they pay the 2 mana for it, you still get to do something. So it's like you don't get to waste your card. You charge them a little bit of mana. Maybe it slows them down for a turn. If not, you just counter the thing. And I don't know. I think it's like a fair counter spell, if that makes any sense. I don't know. I know it's hard to say. It's kind of like Arcane Denial. That's like a fair counter spell. This I think is interesting, and you get to surveil, which is fun. There's like looking at cards to set yourself up. I don't know. For some reason, I like this card a lot. Also, it's weird, side note, that Jace is in this card, even though he's in the story for like a chapter, and he just dips out. And why would he bring loot to this play? Whatever. Anyway. Yeah, that's a story issue, but anyway, moving on. Alright, now we have another Mythic here, another card that people were talking about. Although, from what I've seen, people aren't too keen on this card. I think it's awesome. Mehook Massacre 2. I'm going to read the mana cost. It's kind of a doozy. It's 4 black pips and 2 double X's. So, if you're unfamiliar, double X's means you have to pay the X cost twice. So, if you have to pay 4 black, and if you want to make X equal to 1, you have to pay 2 additional mana. So, you have to pay 6 mana for X to equal 1. And then 8 mana for X equal 2, and so on and so forth. But it's a legendary enchantment. Whenever Mehook Massacre 2 enters, each player sacrifices X amount of creatures. Whenever a creature you control dies, you may pay 3 life. If you do, return that card under your control with a finality counter on it. And then whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, they may pay 3 life. If they don't, return that card under your control with a finality counter. So it's kind of like Erebos, right? Or not Erebos, excuse me, Athreos. The 3 mana one, where if something dies, you have to pay life. If not, you get it back in their hand or back in the battlefield, whatever it is. This is obviously a little bit different. But it's also pretty mana intensive. I mean, honestly, a lot of the time, unless you have just a bunch of mana, you're playing this on 4 mana, right? You're playing X is equal to 0, 4 black mana on the battlefield. Now you have an insurance policy. If a board wipe happens, you can pay life to return your creatures. Also, if the opponents don't want you to have their creatures, they have to pay life too. But again, that's probably the majority of what this card's going to be. But I think that's still a pretty dang good rate, 4 mana, for 4 mana. I mean, it's 1 more mana than Athreos, and it does a little bit more than Athreos too. Granted, it's a little more color intensive, of course, but I don't know. Plus, I just like the flavor of this card too. Like, I think in the story, or one of the videos Wizards put out, they explained how this card kind of like, because Duskmourn has been opening up doors to all the planes, that as Valgavoth does at the end of the story too, where he opens a plane in Innistrad, so obviously people are door to Innistrad. They've heard the stories about the original Mehook Massacre, and it's kind of like taking a life of its own in the house. It's very interesting. And that's why that's the second one. They're like, oh, we can do that, but better, kind of a thing. But yeah, this card's pretty awesome. I think it's very cool. And I'll be running it in probably a lot of stuff. I'm sure it'd probably be expensive like the original Mehook will be, but I think this card is super cool. Alright, we are back to green again with Valgavoth's Onslaught. It is a 1 green and double X. So again, it's a similar thing to Mehook, where if you have to pay 3 mana for X equal to be 1. And then 5 mana, X equal to 2, and so on and so forth. Manifest Dread X times, then put X +1/+1 counters on each of those creatures. And Manifest Dread is a new mechanic. To Manifest Dread, look at the top 2 cards of your library, then put one of them onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature, and the other into your graveyard. You can turn it face up anytime for its mana cost if it's a creature card. I don't know, this card seems interesting to me. With the new Manifest Dread mechanic, I think it's going to be actually pretty good, because you can pick and choose what you're putting on the battlefield. Plus, you can enable graveyard stuff if you want to. Like, say you don't hit a creature, but you hit something you can return back with, like a regrowth or something. Put that in the graveyard, make a 2/2. Plus, you can put a bunch of counters on stuff too. So if you're in green, right, you can make a lot of mana pretty easily. X is equal to 7. 7 creatures, all 7/7s. Obviously, Garruk's Uprising gives him trample. Like, there's a lot of ways. Or like, Kodama, modified creatures have trample, that kind of stuff. But I think this card could be very good in like a very mana hungry deck, or not hungry, excuse me, mana like heavy deck, where you can just constantly drop big fatties every turn, basically. But again, it's also, if you're in other colors other than green, if you have reanimator stuff, Golgari, you can reanimate stuff. I don't know, I think this card is going to be very interesting to play around. I like the design. Alright, next we have another black card. This is Doomsday Excruciator. 6 black mana. All black mana. 6 pips. Creature demon 6/6. It has flying, which is always nice. When Doomsday Excruciator enters, if it was cast, each player exiles all but the bottom 6 cards of their library face down. At the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card. That's it. That's the whole deck. That's the card. I think this card is awesome. It's Doomsday, the card Doomsday. I think it's a sorcery originally. It's very similar where you exile all but like 5 cards, put them in any order, and then, that's your whole deck now. You have 5 cards. That's obviously a huge combo enabler, right? It's a win-con combo piece, that kind of stuff. But this card is just, hey, this game's been going on. We just started this game. I have 6 black mana. Now we have 6 more turns to win the game. Or I guess, in your case, 3 turns, because you're drawing an extra card at your upkeep. I don't know. I think this card just makes the game fun. I think just, like I said, shortcutting the game to everyone has 6 cards in their library is pretty awesome. And I think even it's a flying 6/6 too. So like, people's life totals are low. They hunt creatures. You could potentially kill somebody if they're low enough too with the 6/6 flying. I just think it's a very fun and unique card, especially on a creature. Alright, we are at another card that was spoiled pretty early on here, when they first announced this stuff. Screaming Nemesis. It's a 3 mana creature spear 3/3. It has haste. Whenever Screaming Nemesis is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to any other target. If a player is dealt damage this way, they cannot gain life for the rest of the game. This card is interesting. I think this is kind of like the first, like, because there's obviously this card that says you can't gain life, but this is like the first, hey, if he does damage, you are banned the rest of the game kind of a style. It kind of reminds me of like the Perpetual stuff from Arena, which is, take it or leave it because it's all the alchemy crap, but I think this card's interesting. To my knowledge, there's no cards that are similar to it, like that, hey, you take damage, you can't do this the rest of the game kind of a style of a card. But there's pretty easy ways to break this, anything that just pings damage off this, you can just ping it and then redirect the damage to a person. I know life gain's not huge in the format. It's kind of coming back, at least in my meta. But yeah, this card is just kind of crazy. It's just very incidental. Hey, you can't gain life the rest of the game. I don't know. It's just very even resetting a total, like the life totals is technically counting as gaining life, so you can't even do that. Or, incidental, like, hey, I have a food token. Crack it for 3 life. I survived the crackback. Nope, can't do that anymore. I don't know. I think this is just a very interesting card, and the fact that it has haste too, because why not? It's just a very cool card and a very uniquely mechanical card. Alright, now we have a very talked about card, at least from what I've seen, with Unwanted Remake. It's a 1 white mana, instant, destroy target creature. Its controller Manifest Dread. And again, Manifest Dread is, that player looks at the top 2 cards of their library, then puts 1 onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature and the other into their graveyard. If the face down card is a creature card, it can be turned face up anytime for its mana cost. This is like a slightly worse version of Swords to Plowshare and Path to Exile. And saying it's slightly worse is insane because those 2 cards are basically staples in every format that they can be played, right? But this card is kind of nuts, right? It reads insane, like 1 mana, destroy a creature. Sure, it doesn't exile, which is definitely the benefit of Swords and Path. They do exile versus destroy. This is probably like top 4, right? Like you have Path, Swords. For me, I think, what's the name of that card? Get Lost from the Lost Caverns is probably next. And then I'd be running this first, and then probably Unwanted, or I'd be running this as my 4th pick, and then if I was only mono white, like Stroke of Midnight for my 3rd, just to hit other stuff. But I don't know, man. This card is kind of nuts. and that's why it's on the list. Alright, he is here. The man, the myth himself, the house himself. Valgavoth Terror Eater. It is a 9 mana, 6 generic, and 3 black, which is insane. Legendary creature, Elder Demon with 9/9 power and toughness. It is a mythic. He is like, the main villain of the set. It's flying lifelink. It has ward, sacrifice 3 non-land permanents, which is kind of a crazy ward cost. If a card you don't control would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. During your turn, you may play cards exiled with Valgavoth. If you cast a spell this way, pay life to its equal to its mana value rather than pay its mana cost. So this card's got a lot going on for it. First off, flying and lifelink. The lifelink here is huge, right? Because you're going to be paying life to cast spells that are in exile. So, hey, swing in. He's a flyer. He can get around a lot of things. He's also a 9/9 too, so this thing's huge. It has ward, sacrifice 3 non-land permanents. We saw a similar effect on the Ulamog from Modern Horizons 3. I think it was sacrifice 2 non-land permanents. I wish it was non-token non-land permanents, because there are so many tokens running around where the word cost is, at least in my experience with Ulamog, it's kind of inconsequential. Because there's so many treasure tokens, there's so many food tokens, and there's so much, like, even blood tokens half the time. Or random one-off artifacts that did their thing already. So it's kind of like, sure, you have to sacrifice some stuff, so it's not as crazy, but I think if it was non-token, non-land permanents, this card would be busted maybe, I don't know. But again, still, ward, sacrifice 3 things is still a pretty heavy cost. It has kind of a Dalthy Voidwalker effect on it. If a card you don't control be put into a graveyard, exile instead. Obviously, you don't have the counters and stuff on it, but yeah, then you have a pseudo Bolus of Citadel, similar kind of effect. Instead of playing off your top of your library, you're playing off of cards in exile. So you have to pay the life, kind of a thing. It's interesting. It's a very interesting card, and I think that it's going to be a pretty popular card, especially obviously it's a 9 mana card. I think it's going to be a huge reanimation target for sure. I mean, like I said, it has lifelink, so everything you exile is going to be just gained right back when you hit with it. Yeah, this card's... also, the card's just cool looking. Like, the art is sick as hell. Pardon my French. But yeah, this card's very cool. Again, it's another mythic, so, it's a popular card, but I think it's sick. Okay, and for our last set here, I have a cycle. The cycle that I picked is actually the new rare land cycle. We have, like, Blazemire Verge, Flood Farm Verge, Gloomlake Verge, Hushwood Verge, and Thornspire Verge. And those will be flashing on screen here. I'm bad at editing, so, cut me some slack here. But we have, like, Blazemire Verge. This is the Rakdos one, where you can tap it to add a black. And then you can also tap it to add a red, only if you control a swamp or a mountain. I think these cards, they're like the tainted lands from, whatever set that was, where they tap for black, and if you have a swamp, they tap for other colors as well. But I think these are going to be pretty easily turned on, just because everything, like the new Surveil lands from Karloff Manor, those have land types. There's fetch lands exist in the format. Even basics exist in the format. Like this, I think these are going to be pretty well played. And they come in untapped too, which is crazy. So it's a dual land that can come in untapped. Like I said, it's a recycled tainted land cycle, but they're just kind of crazy. I think honestly, and the art is sick too on most of these. I think my least favorite one's Thornspire Verge, but that's not saying much because all the art is amazing. But yeah, you have Flood Farm Verge, taps for white, and if you have an island or plains, it taps for blue as well. You have Gloomlake Verge, taps for blue. You can tap it to add black if you control an island or swamp. Hushwood Verge is the Selesnya one, so it taps for green, and I can also tap for white. And then Thornspire Verge is the Gruul one, where it taps for red, and it can tap for green as well. But yeah, these cards are going to be pretty popular, I think. But these cards are going to be cool. I think they're going to see a lot of play and a lot of mana bases. They're probably going to be expensive, because, usually the new rare land cycles are. If they don't enter tap in their dual lands, they're going to be popular. But yeah, that's... Well, there you have it. That is my list of cool cards for Commander, or my favorite, whatever. Favorite cards, cool cards. Cards I think are pretty awesome. for the Commander format from the main set of Duskmourn, House of Horror. Yeah, there's a lot of cool cards in this set. This is just like, you know, the ones I picked off, because believe me, this list could have been like probably double or triple. There's so many cool cards in this set I think are going to be interesting to see a lot of play. These are kind of my favorite ones that I picked. But yeah, thanks for checking the video out. Duskmourn comes out pretty soon here, another week or so, at least for pre-release, and then, you know, the full set comes out on the 27th of September, 2024. Looking forward to it quite a bit. But yeah, catch you guys later. Thanks for watching.